The heavy iron doors of the throne room slammed open with a deafening crash. Alpha King Kael Bloodstone stood before his council, his jaw clenched tight as he stared down at the marriage contract laid before him. The parchment trembled slightly in his grip, not from fear, but from barely contained fury. "You expect me to marry sight unseen?" His voice was low, dangerous, the kind of tone that made seasoned warriors take a step back. Lord Brennan, his chief advisor, cleared his throat nervously. "Your Majesty, the Silvercrest Kingdom offers Princess Lyanna as a gesture of peace. The wedding must happen before the eclipse, or the treaty falls apart." "And they won't even let me see her face?" Kael's dark eyes narrowed. "What are they hiding?" The council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Finally, Lady Mora spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "The rumors say she's disfigured, Your Majesty." "Terribly so. They say her own family keeps her veiled because her appearance is too disturbing to behold." A cold smile touched Kael's lips. "Perfect." He grabbed a quill and signed the contract with one decisive stroke. "Beauty has only ever brought me death. Perhaps an ugly bride is exactly what I need." Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy werewolf stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. In the distant Silvercrest Kingdom, Princess Lyanna sat in her tower room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Or rather, at what little she could see of it. The heavy silver veil covered her face completely, as it had for the past 18 years. She raised a trembling hand to touch the fabric, wondering for the 1000th time what lay beneath. "Stop that." Her stepmother's sharp voice cut through the silence as she swept into the room. Queen Morgana's face was twisted with barely concealed disgust. "You should be grateful the Alpha King is desperate enough to take you. No one else would." Lyanna's fingers curled into her palms. "Why won't you let me see my own face? Why have I been veiled since birth?" "Because the sight of you would turn stomachs," Morgana hissed. "The veil is a mercy to the world. Now pack your things. You leave for Bloodmoon Kingdom at dawn." That night, Lyanna lay awake, listening to the whispers of the servants outside her door. The monster bride, they called her. The cursed princess. She had heard it all before, had grown up believing she was truly hideous, truly unworthy of love or even basic kindness. Tomorrow, she would marry a man who had never seen her face, who agreed to wed her only because he needed a queen and expected nothing more than a political arrangement. The journey to Bloodmoon Kingdom took 3 days. Lyanna rode in a sealed carriage with curtains drawn tight. At every village they passed, she could hear the cruel laughter, the mocking comments. "Look at that, they're transporting the ugly bride in a cage. The Alpha King must be desperate. I heard she has scales instead of skin." Each word was a dagger to her heart, but Lyanna kept her head down, her veil secure, her hands folded in her lap. She had learned long ago that silence was her only shield. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, they arrived at the Bloodmoon Palace. As Lyanna stepped from the carriage, something strange happened. The royal wolves, massive beasts that served as guards, suddenly lowered their heads in a gesture of respect. One of them, a silver-furred alpha wolf, actually whined softly and pressed its nose to the ground. "What in the moon's name?" one of the guards muttered. "They never do that. Not even for the king." Lyanna's heart raced beneath her heavy robes. She didn't understand it either, but something about this place felt different. The air itself seemed to hum with energy, and beneath her veil, her skin began to tingle strangely. She was escorted to her chambers, where a kind-faced maid named Alara helped her prepare for the ceremony. As Alara adjusted Lyanna's gloves, her hand accidentally brushed against Lyanna's wrist. The maid gasped, her eyes widening in shock. "My lady, your skin, it's hideous, I know," Lyanna whispered, pulling away quickly. "No," Alara breathed, staring at her with something that looked almost like awe. "That's not what I was going to say at all." Before Lyanna could question her further, there was a knock at the door. It was time. The great hall of Bloodmoon Palace had been transformed for the wedding. Hundreds of candles flickered along the walls, casting dancing shadows across the assembled nobles and dignitaries. But there was no joy in this gathering, no celebration. Instead, the air crackled with anticipation and barely suppressed curiosity. Everyone wanted to see the bride, to confirm the rumors, to witness what they assumed would be the Alpha King's humiliation. Kael stood at the altar, his face an expressionless mask. He wore ceremonial black robes that emphasized his powerful build, his dark hair pulled back to reveal sharp, handsome features that had broken hearts across kingdoms. But his eyes were cold, distant, as if he had already removed himself from this moment. His beta, Marcus, leaned close. "You don't have to do this. We can find another way." "There is no other way," Kael replied quietly. "And besides, what does it matter what she looks like? Everyone I've ever cared about has died. A wife I feel nothing for might actually survive me." But even as he said the words, something twisted uncomfortably in his chest. A strange sense of anticipation that he couldn't quite suppress. The great doors opened, and the hall fell silent. Every head turned. Lyanna walked slowly down the aisle, her entire body covered in layers of silver veils that caught the candlelight and shimmered like moonlight on water. Her hands trembled so badly she had to clasp them together to keep them steady. Behind the veil, tears stung her eyes as she heard the whispers. "Completely covered. It must be bad. Poor king. Married to a monster. This is what desperation looks like." Each step felt like an eternity. The aisle stretched impossibly long before her. But then, through the veil, she saw him. Alpha King Kael, tall and imposing, waiting at the altar. Even from a distance, she could feel the power radiating from him, the sheer presence that commanded the room. And something else. Something that made her heart skip a beat and her skin flush with sudden heat. A pull, inexplicable and undeniable, drawing her toward him. Kael watched her approach and felt his composure crack for the first time in years. There was something about the way she moved, graceful despite her obvious fear. And that scent, even through all the veils, he caught hints of it. Jasmine and moonflowers and something else, something that made his wolf stir restlessly inside him. When she finally reached the altar, he extended his hand. She hesitated for a moment, then placed her gloved hand in his. Even through the fabric, he felt a jolt of electricity that nearly made him pull away. Her hand was shaking. Without thinking, he squeezed gently, trying to offer some comfort. He heard her sharp intake of breath and felt her grip tighten around his fingers. The priest began the ceremony, his voice droning on about duty and alliance and the bonds of matrimony. Kael barely heard a word. All his attention was focused on the woman beside him. She was tall, he noticed, her head coming nearly to his shoulder. And despite the heavy veils, he could sense a quiet strength in the way she held herself. When it came time for the vows, Lyanna's voice was so soft he had to lean closer to hear her. "I, Lyanna of Silvercrest, take you, Kael of Bloodmoon, to be my husband. In this life and all that follow." Something about those words sent a shiver down his spine. They sounded less like a recitation and more like a promise, ancient and binding. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The priest smiled broadly, clearly enjoying the drama. "And now, Your Majesty, you may unveil your bride." The hall erupted in barely suppressed whispers. Nobles leaned forward in their seats. Some held their breath. Others smirked, ready to witness the spectacle. Lyanna felt her heart stop. This was it. The moment when he would see her and recoil in horror, confirming everything she had been told her entire life. She wanted to run, to disappear, to be anywhere but here. Kael reached for the veil slowly, carefully. Part of him didn't want to do this, didn't want to see what lay beneath and have to pretend it didn't matter. But there was no avoiding it now. His fingers grasped the edge of the silver fabric. He lifted it gently, expecting, he didn't know what. Scars perhaps. Burns. Some terrible disfigurement that would explain why an entire kingdom had hidden their princess away. The veil rose inch by inch. First, he saw her chin, delicate and perfectly formed. Then her lips, full and rose-colored. Her nose, small and elegant. And finally, as the veil fell away completely, her eyes. Kael's breath caught in his throat. The world seemed to stop spinning. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Her face was flawless, with high cheekbones and skin that seemed to glow with an inner light. But it was her eyes that truly captured him, large and luminous, colored like molten silver, swirling with depth and emotion. They looked at him with such vulnerability, such fear, such desperate hope that something in his chest cracked open. Around them, the hall erupted. Gasps echoed off the walls. Someone dropped a goblet with a loud crash. Lady Seraphine, one of the kingdom's renowned beauties, actually fainted, sliding from her chair in shock. By the moon goddess, Marcus breathed beside him. But Kael couldn't speak, couldn't move. He stood frozen, staring into those silver eyes, feeling something shift fundamentally in his soul. His wolf surged forward with recognition, with possessive certainty. Mate. The word echoed through every fiber of his being. Mate. Mine. At that exact moment, magic exploded through the hall. The candles flared bright blue. The windows rattled in their frames. And on Kael's chest, hidden beneath his robes, his ancestral mark began to burn with sudden heat. Lyanna felt it too, a surge of power so intense it nearly drove her to her knees. The magical binding that had hidden her true appearance for 18 years shattered like glass. She gasped as sensation flooded through her, as if she were truly seeing and feeling and experiencing the world for the first time. And in that moment, she also felt the bond snap into place. The golden thread connecting her soul to his, ancient and unbreakable. "What's happening?" someone shouted from the crowd. The shadows on the walls began to move independently, writhing and stretching like living things. A cold wind swept through the hall despite all the windows being closed. And somewhere in the distance, something that sounded like thunder rumbled ominously. Kael finally found his voice. "Everyone out. Now." "Your Majesty," Lord Brennan started. "I said now." The command in his voice was absolute. Nobles scrambled from their seats, rushing toward the exits in a confused, frightened mass. Within minutes, the hall was empty except for Kael, Lyanna, Marcus, and a few trusted guards. Kael turned back to his bride, who was staring at him with wide, confused eyes. "You're not ugly," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You've never been ugly." This was something else. A curse. A binding spell. "I don't understand," Lyanna whispered. "They told me I was hideous. My whole life, they told me. They lied." Kael stepped closer, unable to stop himself. "Why would they hide you? Why would they bind your appearance?" Before Lyanna could answer, Marcus interrupted urgently. "Kael, something's wrong." The shadows, he was right. The darkness in the corners of the room was growing thicker, more substantial. And within it, something was beginning to take shape. Something ancient and malevolent. Kael moved instantly, positioning himself between Lyanna and the threat. "Get behind me." But Lyanna didn't move. She stood transfixed, staring at the shadows as memories suddenly flooded her mind. Images she had never seen before, knowledge she shouldn't possess. "I remember," she gasped. "There was a prophecy. When I was born, a seer came to the castle. She said, when the moon reveals her face, a kingdom will fall. The silver-blooded one will rise, and the darkness that has slept will wake." "The silver-blooded one?" Marcus repeated. "That's impossible. They're just legends." "No," Lyanna said, looking down at her hands as they began to glow with faint silver light. "They're not. My mother was one. That's why they hid me. That's why my stepmother hated me. She knew what I was, what I would become." The shadow entity fully formed now, a massive creature of darkness and rage. It spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "Finally. The binding is broken. The prophecy begins. And you, little princess, will give me your power. Kael's body tensed for battle, but Lyanna placed a hand on his arm. No. This is my fight. Like hell it is, Kael growled. You're my wife now. My mate. I protect what's mine. The word mate sent a shockwave through Lyanna. He felt it too. He knew. But there was no time to process that revelation because the entity attacked. The battle was chaos. Kael shifted partially, his eyes glowing gold, his strength multiplying as he fought the creature. Marcus and the guards joined in, but their weapons passed through the shadow as if through smoke. Nothing physical could touch it. Lyanna felt power building inside her, unfamiliar and frightening. Silver light began to emanate from her skin, growing brighter with each passing second. Images flashed through her mind, her mother, who she'd never known, standing in a circle of light. A silver wolf, massive and majestic, howling at the moon. Ancient words in a language she shouldn't understand but somehow did. When the entity lunged at Kael, something inside Lyanna snapped. No. The word came out as a command, backed by power that shook the foundations of the palace. Silver light exploded from her body, so bright that everyone had to shield their eyes. When the light faded, Lyanna stood transformed. Her eyes blazed pure silver, her hair floated around her as if underwater, and her skin glowed with celestial radiance. The entity recoiled. Impossible. You shouldn't have this much power yet. The awakening isn't complete, you threatened my mate, Lyanna said, and her voice carried layers of sound, as if multiple versions of her were speaking at once. That was your fatal mistake. She raised her hands and silver chains erupted from the ground, binding the creature. It thrashed and screamed, but the chains held firm, glowing brighter and brighter until the entire shadow being began to disintegrate. This isn't over, it hissed as it dissolved. The prophecy will be fulfilled. A kingdom will fall. And you cannot stop what has already been set in motion. Then it was gone. Lyanna swayed on her feet, the power draining out of her as quickly as it had come. Kael caught her before she could fall, pulling her against his chest. She looked up at him, her eyes back to normal silver, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know. I didn't know any of this. Shoo, Kael murmured, surprising himself with how gentle his voice had become. You have nothing to apologize for. But the prophecy. A kingdom will fall. What if it's yours? What if by marrying me, I've doomed you all? Kael cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his gaze. Then we'll face it together. You're my mate, Lyanna. From the moment I unveiled you, I felt it. My wolf recognized you. And nothing, no prophecy, no dark entity, nothing will take you from me. Do you understand? Lyanna's breath hitched. You barely know me. I know enough, he said firmly. I know you've lived your whole life being told you were something you're not. I know you've been hidden and hurt and made to feel worthless. And I know that despite all of that, you stood your ground tonight. You protected me. You faced down an ancient evil without hesitation. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, wiping away a tear. You're extraordinary, Lyanna. And I intend to spend every day proving to you that you're exactly where you belong. Something in his words broke through the last of Lyanna's defenses. For the first time in her life, she felt seen. Not as a monster to be hidden or a pawn to be used, but as herself. As someone worthy. She rose on her toes and pressed her forehead against his. I felt it too, she whispered. The bond. When you unveiled me, it was like everything clicked into place. Kael's arms tightened around her. Around them, Marcus discreetly cleared his throat. I hate to interrupt this moment, but we need to talk about what just happened. If there's more of those things coming, there will be, Lyanna said, pulling back slightly but staying in Kael's embrace. I can feel it. Whatever was binding my power also kept me hidden from dark forces. Now that I'm exposed, they'll come for me. For us. Let them come, Kael said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. They'll learn quickly that attacking the Luna Queen of Bloodmoon was the last mistake they'll ever make. Luna Queen? Lyanna repeated, her eyes widening. Did you think I'd call you anything less? Kael smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his face. You're my mate. My queen. My equal. And tomorrow, I'm going to make sure everyone in this kingdom knows it. True to his word, the next morning Kael called an assembly of the entire court. Nobles who had whispered cruel things the day before now stood nervously, unsure what to expect. When Kael appeared with Lyanna at his side, the gasp started all over again. She wore a gown of midnight blue that made her silver eyes even more striking, and she held her head high, her veil gone forever. Kael's voice rang out across the hall. Many of you came to yesterday's ceremony expecting to see a monster. Instead, you witnessed something far more powerful. You saw the awakening of my mate, your Luna Queen, the silver-blooded heir of Silvercrest. Anyone who showed her disrespect yesterday has until sunset to leave my kingdom. Those who remain will swear fealty to her, not as some political arrangement, but as the rightful queen she has always been meant to be. The silence was absolute. Then, slowly, Marcus was the first to kneel. I swear my loyalty to Queen Lyanna, Luna of Bloodmoon, protector of the pack. One by one, the others followed. Some with genuine respect in their eyes, others with fear, but all of them kneeling before the woman they had mocked just yesterday. Lyanna looked out at the sea of bowed heads and felt something shift inside her. The frightened girl who had hidden behind a veil was gone. In her place stood a queen who had faced darkness and won. A woman who had found not just a husband, but a true partner. A mate who saw her for exactly what she was and valued her all the more for it. She glanced at Kael, who was watching her with such intensity and pride that her heart swelled. He gave her the smallest nod of encouragement. Lyanna stepped forward. Rise, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. I'm not your enemy. I'm your queen, and together with your king, I will protect this kingdom with everything I am. The applause that followed was thunderous. That night, as they stood together on the balcony of their chambers, looking out over the moonlit kingdom, Kael pulled Lyanna close. Are you ready for what comes next? The prophecy is still out there. The darkness will return. I know, Lyanna said, leaning into his warmth. But I'm not afraid anymore. How can I be, when I have you beside me? Kael pressed a kiss to her temple. Then let them come. They wanted an ugly duckling to mock and destroy. Instead, they've awakened a queen. And they're going to regret it. Lyanna smiled, silver light dancing in her eyes. For the first time in her life, she felt powerful. She felt chosen. She felt loved. And somewhere in the shadows, ancient forces stirred, preparing for the battles yet to come. But that, as they say, is a story for another time. If you enjoyed this tale of the Alpha King and his extraordinary queen, make sure to like this video and drop a comment telling us which part was your favorite. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another supernatural romance story. Share this with someone who loves werewolf tales. And remember, if you don't like, comment, share, and subscribe, it means you're in support of the villain. Don't let the darkness win. Join our pack today.